We've been living and traveling in our RV for the past couple years, and we get asked all the time about the reality of full-time RV living. So today in this video, we are going to share all the pros and cons of living in an RV full-time.
Welcome to our channel, Fuel Your Wander. We're Kris, Hillary, and Axel. After traveling the world extensively, we decided to embark on our biggest adventure yet and purchased our first RV. We started out as part-time RVers and then made the switch to living full-time in our motorhome. We sold our house and most of our belongings and hit the road. 3 years later, we've never been happier. Time is the most precious resource we have, and it's the one thing money can't buy. We're in pursuit of a life less ordinary, but all the more extraordinary.
So today we're going to do a collaboration with Izzy and MJ from Endless RVing. They live in their RV part-time, and we're going to share the pros and cons of what it's like to live in an RV.
So after you're done with our video, be sure to head over to their channel, Endless RVing, and if you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe to their channel and show them some love. All right, so let's start with the bad first. We'll get the bad things out of the way. We're going to share the 5 cons to living full-time in an RV.
Number one, things are not set up for the nomad lifestyle. The American dream is all about having a home and having an address, and part of being a nomad is we don't have an address, and that makes everything quite difficult.
Yeah, and you'd honestly be surprised how difficult things can be when you don't have a normal address. So, for example, we were living in North Carolina before we went full-time RV, and we had kept our address in North Carolina, but that poses a lot of challenges when you're living in an RV full-time, because how do you get your mail? How do you file taxes? How do you register your vehicle? How do you get insurance? Everything is sort of set up with this concept that you have to have residency in a state. So it's really difficult when, basically the whole country is our backyard in our home. So it's just not set up to not have an address.
Yeah, we've often said it'd be really nice if we could just have one USA address and not a state address.
Yeah, and the other thing that comes with that is things like doctor's appointments or hair appointments. I tend to go to the doctor and get my hair done more than Kris does. So things like finding doctors and just being able to schedule appointments, that is all a lot more challenging, and it's something that we've taken for granted before we had this lifestyle, and now I feel like we're definitely a lot more appreciative of those things, but it just takes a lot more planning and consideration in advance. One of the ways that we were able to combat this and find a solution is by signing up for a domicile service. If you don't know what a domicile is, essentially it is an address that you are provided by a company that you can use as your home permanent address. And what happens is you sign up for this service, they give you an address, and then you can use that for things like driver's license, vehicle registration, taxes. Number 2, difficult to get the RV repaired while you're living in it. So funny thing, we are actually in the Austin area right now, staying at my parents' house because our brand new RV just broke down for the second time in 6 months. So we broke down this past weekend. We were traveling on a Friday afternoon from the Austin area going to our next destination in Arizona, and we broke down on the side of the highway in the middle of nowhere, Texas on a Friday afternoon. Our RV had to be towed a couple hundred miles. Super frustrating, but that is one of the really difficult things about living in your RV full-time, is that when your RV has to get repaired, you lose your house.
But we were about 4 hours into a 15-hour drive from the middle of Texas to Arizona, and all of a sudden Hillary noticed the engine was starting to overheat. Even though I was driving, she noticed.
All of a sudden I just see red and I'm like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah, and sure enough, we pulled over to the side of the road and the fan clutch had gone out on our RV again, causing it to overheat. So we pulled off to the side of the road, found a good place to park, and did what we can. But I think it was about 9 hours later, we finally got picked up by a tow truck and had it towed to a repair facility. And now we're here at her parents' house waiting for the thing to get repaired. Maybe we'll get it done in the next 5 days.
Yeah, we're really hopeful it won't take too long, since we know what the problem is, and we're hopeful that Freightliner can help get us expedited repairs and parts. But this is just one of those things that's just really frustrating, and there's nothing you can do. It just comes up out of nowhere, and you have to be able to prepare for the unexpected and kind of just go with the flow. We honestly were just sort of laughing when it happened, because we're like, we can't believe this is happening again so soon, and I'm just trying not to have a meltdown. So
no, you really do have to look at it as just another experience as part of being in the RV lifestyle. You make the best of it. We had dinner on the side of the road. I think Hillary made some Indian food, and it was actually delicious. So we watched some Big Bang Theory, waited for the tow truck to come.
Yeah, thank goodness we were at least in comfort while that was happening.
Number 3 is that we feel a bit unsettled at times. We don't really have a home base. We don't have some place that we call home. Obviously, we call the RV home, but it can be a bit unsettling, and it kind of connects back to our first item, which is it's a bit of an unusual lifestyle. So you do feel like sometimes it'd be nice to just have a place to call your own.
When we get to new places, it's always fun and exciting to be somewhere new, but you got to find a grocery store and you got to figure out where a hospital might be or a veterinarian if we need it. And it's just those types of things can kind of weigh on you at times, that it can be sort of frustrating that you don't know how to get around, you don't know what's around. Like this situation we're in, staying with my parents right now, if we're in other parts of the country and something happens, we don't have anybody nearby. We don't know anyone around. So it's just a little bit more difficult not having your support system that you would have in a traditional home that is in a permanent, sticks and bricks building.
Yeah, with neighbors and family and things around you. Those are the kind of things that we don't have on a typical basis. We're, like she said, we're fortunate in this case, but typically that's not the way that we have what we have.
Yeah. And I would also say that you have to make a real effort to see family and friends. A lot of times living in an RV, people can't really come visit you. You just don't have enough space to have visitors. So you have to be the one to make the effort to travel near them, to go see them. In the past, we had family that would fly in and stay with us for a week because we had a house with spare bedrooms, or we would see our friends frequently, go out to happy hour, see friends after work. But this lifestyle, you don't have that. So you have to make a concerted effort to keep in touch with people. Number 4 is that RVing is not as flexible or inexpensive as you might think. So when we first dove into RV travel, we actually got into it during the COVID pandemic, and we were tired of our trips getting canceled. We had some international trips that just kept getting canceled last minute. So we thought an RV would be fun so we could sort of own our own destiny. We could hop in the RV and just take off and go for an adventure. That is far from the case, especially when it comes to an RV of our size. So we have a 45-foot motorhome, which means it's a lot more difficult to find places to park the RV, and we can't just park off the side of the road in places that can be dangerous just because of the size of our rig. So we end up having to make reservations pretty far in advance. Right now we book out about 6 to 12 months for some places, depending on where we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the pluses that I thought RV life would be all about. I'm not a planner. I'm very reactive and very spontaneous, and I thought this would be great. We can just pick up on a Saturday. We're based in California, right, and then on Monday we'll be in Florida, but it's not at all like that. Fortunately, Hillary is a big planner and she is able to manage the schedule and keep us all aligned, but it takes a lot of coordination. It takes a lot of organization to make sure that we have a place to stay, that we aren't bouncing from Walmart to Walmart to Walmart. So it does take a lot of planning.
Yeah, and because places are getting more booked up, they're raising the prices. Like everything right now, inflation is hot. There's a lot of RV parks that are in high demand right now. So these places are raising the prices because they run a business, and I get it, but it's getting more and more expensive. So it's just something to be aware of, that we kind of originally thought that RV travel would be really cheap and inexpensive, flexible, and it hasn't turned out that way for us. That's not to say that it can't be. I think there are a lot of ways where it can be very inexpensive, and it can be very flexible. If you're in a van or a smaller vehicle, you can boondock and do a lot of different things. But the way we're doing it in our size motorhome, it's just not that way.
Yeah, that's very true. So number 5 is living in a small space. I don't think people really appreciate what it's like to live in 350 square feet. We both, we moved from our previous house, which was about 2,200 square feet. Again, not a large house by many American standards, but a big house for the two of us. And it's quite challenging to downsize from 2,200 square feet down to 350, 400 square feet. You give up a lot of things. We go from, a full-size closet to living out of just a cupboard-sized closet. And you have to take all of that into account. You give up a lot of material things that you would have in your house or maybe in your shop. You don't have that space and that amount of, or that ability to just have things inside of a small space. I'd say the other thing is you really have to love your partner. You really have to be willing to, or be able to, spend all your time with them, because there is no personal space, right? You're together all the time in everything that we do. Even when we're separate, all we are is 5 feet apart from each other. She's in the bedroom, I'm in the living room. I can almost literally reach out and touch her from room to room.
And luckily, I feel like we actually do pretty well living in a very small space together. Kris is exactly right, though. is more challenging than you might think living in such a small space. I think sometimes it's easier because we have less to clean, less to maintain inside, we have less stuff to keep track of, but especially when you're making that jump to full-time, it's a big change. You know, I gave up most of the appliances and cooking utensils and pots and pans and dishes that I had, and most of the time I don't miss them, but there are rare occasions where I'm like, I really wish I had that, or just different clothes that you may not have anymore. So it's definitely a sacrifice that you just have to be willing to make in exchange for all the other awesome perks you get as part of it.
Yeah, very true.
And then, like Kris mentioned, I think it's also really important that you like the person that you're with. I will admit we get in little tiffs from time to time, like I think any couple does. We get along extremely well, but there are times where we just get on each other's nerves and you need a little bit of private space. It's something that you get used to, and I think over time you really do start to realize you don't actually need that much space to be happy. So now that we've gone through the top biggest cons, in our opinion, of full-time RV living, we're going to go through the good stuff. These are the top pros, in our opinion, of living full-time in an RV. So number one, and definitely our favorite by far, is just the freedom. You get a lot of freedom from living in an RV. You get to travel to a lot of different places. You can chase the good weather. We typically try to stay in like the 70s as the high and the 40s or 50s as the low. We try to stay out of really hot, really humid, and really cold places too. So we're able to just move around and go to places where the weather is perfect. That is definitely a huge perk.
Definitely. I mean, that's one of the reasons we got into it. Even though it's a little bit difficult to plan ahead, like we were talking about, it's still great to be able to be mobile and go wherever we want to go and follow the sun.
Yeah. And since we've been traveling in our RV for the past couple of years, we've been to 37 states now, almost, no,
39.
38. No, 38.
38.
We've been to 38. We'll hit 39 when we go to California in a few weeks. Hopefully we still get there. But we've been to 38 states already in our RV. So a lot of those states we've actually been to multiple times now. And it's just amazing being able to experience all these different places, going to national parks, state parks, different historical landmarks, and we don't necessarily have to take vacation to see them. We're able to just do it on a regular Tuesday. You know, we can go out to the Grand Canyon instead of having to take vacation time for it. We can just do that during the week while still working.
Yeah, and we're not just in a location for a weekend or a week. We can spend a week, 3 weeks or a month in a location, or even longer if we want. So number two is the ability to take our home with us wherever we go. We don't just travel out of a suitcase. We don't just hop on airplanes, rent cars, and stay in hotels. We actually just get to take our home everywhere we go. So we have our own pillows, our own bed, our own clothes and closet and dog and all of the things that you would have within the house. And it really makes traveling just so much nicer.
Yeah, and Kris and I both used to fly and travel for work extensively. He's got almost 2 million miles on an airline, so we've both flown extensively, and it can be a pain doing air travel. You've got one little carry-on, you've got to wait for TSA, you've got to wait for security, you've got lots of different things going on, and you don't really own your schedule when you're traveling on a plane or another way. So in an RV, it's really nice because you can take your time. You can stop when you want to stop. We can cook meals on the road. We have all of our stuff with us, like Kris said. It's just, it can be a really nice way to travel. And I would say, like, once you get into it, it's really hard to go back. We used to think of hotels as sort of this splurge of an experience where you'd get kind of spoiled at a hotel. And now we actually don't enjoy staying at hotels as much anymore, especially post-COVID. I feel like the service has gone downhill a lot. But, you don't get your own bed. You're sleeping in a place where a lot of other people have slept. It's not as comfortable. You can't cook. So we actually much prefer traveling in our own home all the time now as opposed to traveling in a hotel.
Yeah, the TSA screening process is a lot easier for an RV than it is on an airline.
That's true. I only ask you a couple questions.
That's right.
Number 3, we would say, is just being able to focus on experiences over materialistic things. This is something that we have learned a lot about since moving into an RV full time. Like we mentioned earlier, one of the cons is that you have less space, so you don't get to keep as many things with you. It's also a pro in our opinion, though, because it just frees you up to really be able to focus on what's important in life instead of trying to, just buy more furniture or buy more stuff to fill up a room. And we're able to spend our time, money, and resources on doing things together, traveling, seeing different things, making really cool memories instead of just buying new stuff.
Yeah, it's very true. We have the time and we have the freedom to actually do that. And we don't have the space to buy a lot of things. So we do spend all of our time and all of our energy just focused on the experience itself. So number 4, it can be less expensive than owning a house. We get this question a lot, just in general. What does it cost? What does it cost versus owning a house? And it really depends on a number of different factors. Depends on the type of RV that you buy. You can certainly find RVs that are multi-million-dollar RVs, but you can also find RVs that are reasonably priced and less expensive than a typical American home. You also have the benefit of moving around, which means that you can find less expensive places to stay. So we've certainly seen some very high, and actually been able to stay, and been fortunate enough to be able to stay at some very high-end motor coach resorts. But there's also plenty of other places that you can stay that are less expensive, like state parks. You don't have utility costs. You don't have the things that you would have in a house, like electric bills and water bills and sewer bills, because that's typically all wrapped up into whatever your overnight stay is. Typically, if you're paying attention to how you spend your money, it's going to be less expensive to live in an RV than it is to be in a typical house.
This is one of the reasons why we made the switch from part-time RVing to full-time RVing, because when we were part-timing and when we still had a house, it was costing us a fortune. I'll just be honest, because we were paying for the RV, we were paying for RV parks, we were paying for insurance, and we were also paying for our house and our mortgage and utilities on the house. And so doing both was becoming quite expensive. And that was actually one of the reasons why we decided to sell our house, because we liked traveling in the RV so much, but it felt like a waste to be paying for our house when we weren't there for a whole summer. So we decided to sell the house, do the RV full time. And I would say since we've made that transition, we've definitely spent less money on a monthly or annual basis than we did living in a house. But you know, we get people tell us all the time, well, an RV is a terrible investment. It's a depreciating asset. We know, trust me, we are not advocating for anyone to purchase an RV as a financial investment. But, you know, again, for us, it's not about a financial investment at this point. It's about an investment in our experiences and our time and just wanting to make the most of life right now. We've owned houses in the past, and at this point, we're just ready for a change and we wanted to do something different.
Investment in life.
Yeah.
So number 5 is quality time together. We spend a lot of time together. We wake up together, obviously. We go to bed together, and we spend every minute together during the day. We don't have a lot of space, and it's important to us. We do enjoy spending time together. As Hillary said earlier, every once in a while we get into a bit of a tiff, certainly like any couple does, but we love spending time together. We love doing things together.
And I would definitely say that living in an RV and living in a small space and traveling all over the country can bring you a lot closer together as a couple. I think Kris and I, the foundation of our entire relationship was built on travel. The first couple years of our relationship, we traveled all around the world together. And so travel is a very important piece of our relationship. And I think that just living in an RV full time just helps to build upon that even more, and just really gives us a lot that we can do together and a lot that we can enjoy together. But if you're with someone that you don't maybe enjoy being with all the time, an RV probably isn't going to help make that better. So it's got to be someone that you really want to spend time with and that you really get along with. You have compatible interests.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You're in some very difficult and complex situations, even like when you're trying to park the RV in the middle of the night and you're backing into some stall. You know, if you don't get along and you're not able to communicate and work together well, it's not going to work. But for us, it does. It works really well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really stressful situations like this breakdown. You know, this is our second time breaking down, and you can either yell at each other and fight and get mad at each other, or you can come together and trust each other and help each other out, and it can really help build your relationship and make you even stronger.
That's right.
Hopefully that helps to answer some of your questions that you might have about living and traveling in an RV full time. There's definitely lots of pros and cons, but I think for us, even right now in the midst of a breakdown, you know, I think the pros still far outweigh the cons for us, and we definitely still love this lifestyle and would highly recommend it if it's something that you're interested in doing.
So if you have any questions, drop us a comment below. We're happy to answer any questions that come at us.
Thank you all for watching, and if you haven't already done so, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that way you can stay up to date on all of our latest YouTube videos. Like we mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is a collaboration with our friends Izzy and MJ of Endless RVing. They are sharing their insights from a part-time RV living perspective, so be sure to head over to their channel, watch their video, and also subscribe. And with that, we want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful Happy New Year. We are wishing you all a wonderful 2024, and we'll see you next year.